comment ça va? That is the most French that I know. So I first want to say thank you very much for accommodating the fact that I only speak English. Hopefully I won't use too many American slang words, and I will speak slow enough so that my meaning gets through. So thank you for your attention. As introduced, I'm the Regional HR Director for LinkedIn, and I joined the company almost 2.5 years ago. And before I go into my presentation, I thought I would tell a short story about how I was recruited to LinkedIn. So I was living and working in Ireland, pretty happy at the company that I was at. And my boss, who was the CEO, and I were discussing the value of recommendations on LinkedIn. He said they were useless. I said, it tells me the person worked there. I use it when I do reference checks. I use them for a number of reasons. And he said, well, you have one recommendation. What does that say about you? And this made me a little angry. So I went to my desk and I said, I'll show you. And I sent out requests for recommendations and I tidied up my profile. And I forgot about our conversation. The next day, a former colleague from the US emailed and said, hey, I noticed you sent out a request for recommendations. Are you looking to change jobs? Because LinkedIn is opening an office in Ireland, and they're looking for people like you. I emailed back and said, no, I'm not looking for a job, thank you. I was just proving a point, and I described the interaction with the CEO. Well, my former colleague knows me very well, and he knew that perhaps that wasn't the environment for me. And so he sent my profile to his friend who was a recruiter, and she emailed me that evening. And the next day she phoned me, because of course he gave her my contact info. And from that period forward, through the process, I realized that perhaps it was a different company that I was oriented to and that I wanted to work for. And so I decided to leave the company I was at and I joined LinkedIn. This is a story of passive recruitment. This is what it means to find the unique person who has the skills. I had both European experience, I had Asia experience, and I had very strong US multinational experience. I had those unique skills that LinkedIn was looking for, but I wasn't looking to change jobs. So the reason this is such an interesting story is because as an HR person, this scares me. It makes me very frightened. Because it means that people in our organization can have these opportunities touch them all the time. But instead of being frightened, I was inspired. And joining a company at LinkedIn where we use LinkedIn exclusively for our recruiting makes us think differently about who we are as HR professionals and how we engage with our employees. So you don't have the St. Peter experience of you're now staff. This is something that as HR professionals we must be thinking about and thinking forward. Before I go into frightened versus inspired, I'll just tell you briefly who is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the world's largest professional network. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. Hopefully all of you have profiles on LinkedIn, being part of the 65% of the executives in France with profiles available. We have over 187 million members worldwide. And in France alone, we have 4 million members. And in fact, that rate is growing very fast. As a global platform, we're adding 2 new members every second, and we're adding about 1 million members every week. Here in Europe, it's about 1 million members every month. And that just shows the power of social media and how we can use it as professionals. We were founded in 2003, and so as somebody called us, we were one of the oldest startups around. I remember I've been working for a number of years. And I remember a lot of predecessors to LinkedIn, to Facebook. But it's about social acceptance, about professionals using the site and finding it relevant on a worldwide basis. When I joined, our site was in 6 languages. We now have our site available in 19 languages. The growth of LinkedIn is phenomenal. And our mission is pretty simple. Our mission is to connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. Fundamentally, that's the core of who we are. It's about our members, and we think of our employees as members as well. And so some of the examples that I'm going to give you about things that we do from an HR standpoint, we'll always keep that in mind. Our members come first. So, going back to my story, are you frightened by that, or are you inspired? I think that there's already been some discussion about the power of social media and how it can affect us from a recruiting standpoint. It's not about being frightened, it's about embracing it, because passive talent, people who can uniquely fill the jobs that you're trying to hire, are actually not looking. And we find statistically that 79% of people who have those skills that you're looking for are not actively sending in CVs. You want to touch those people. You want those people to come and work for you. Why? Because they're 33% more likely to want challenging work. They're about 72% more likely to come in and make an impact in the first 90 days of employment. Because those are the individuals who are engaged, they have a high professional standard, a high professional acumen. But again, they're not looking. And this is where the power of social media, particularly LinkedIn and the platform we provide, can help you as recruiters or talent professionals find that talent. How we recruit is changing. It's transforming. Now, everyone has different views. I think there's always going to be a world where we have agencies, where we have job boards, where we have platforms like LinkedIn. It's important to have a diverse strategic view on your recruiting strategy. At LinkedIn, one of our values is about integrity, and so we only use LinkedIn, and sometimes that's a challenge, I'll be honest. But just to illustrate the power of it is that when I joined, we had about 500 employees worldwide. We now have 3,100 employees worldwide. We're a small company with a very big brand. That's all in 3 years, and only using LinkedIn. As we've entered new countries, as we entered France, we used LinkedIn to recruit. We now have 40 professionals working here. As we enter a new market, we just launched the UAE. We used LinkedIn to identify those people. But I also used LinkedIn to get in touch with HR directors to understand what is the competitive landscape, what are the commercial requirements from an employment standpoint. So it's not just about recruiting. And I have to be honest, I don't remember what the 2 to 11 is. So I just remembered. That's offices. So in countries. We were in 2 countries 3 years ago, and now we're in 11 countries. So again, we've been using LinkedIn exclusively for that expansion. So again, I want to just push away the frightened. I think with the millennials coming into our workforce, with us Generation Y folks getting a little bit more savvy, social media is actually transforming how we work, not just how we find talent. So what I wanted to share was some very practical things that we've been doing, which is shifting our HR strategy because of this nuance of passive recruiting, because how it has pervaded how talent and opportunity is connected. And I'll talk very briefly on just 3 topics, and I'm going to illustrate with some examples. Specifically, these examples are oriented around culture as well as our employer brand. The first one is promoting your values and fostering the culture of your company. And I'm going to use some very specific examples there. Secondly, and Laurent had already alluded to something that Mazars is doing, which is focusing on employee development and don't worry about retention. And the third one is managing your employer brand. This is really important, not just externally, but also internally to the employees you have and the ones that you want to foster and develop and focus on. So let's take a look. Promoting your values and fostering your culture. I am one of those HR people who actually hate corporate values. I think that they can really be destructive if you don't use them. If they're just words on a wall, employees will say those values mean nothing. They must be integrated into the culture of your company, into who you are as an employee base and who you aspire to be. These are our values. And when we launch a new program, such as our onboarding program called Life at LinkedIn, we think about which values are we touching. The values our members come first. We treat our employees as members, and therefore we feel that they have the respect to join and get an onboarding experience that makes them act like an owner, They understand our business. They understand how we derive revenue from our platform. We also foster relationships because in that onboarding program, people are encouraged to build up a community and connect with each other. And in fact, they leverage our LinkedIn groups to stay in touch, to share ideas, and to collaborate. We are open, honest, and constructive at our onboarding program, and we do demand excellence, but I think we really tick the box on 3 of those. You know, we launched competitions in recruiting. I wanted to shift some thinking in the business about how we were closing candidates, shorten that time frame. So I launched a competition last year called 30 in 30. I wanted to close 30 roles in 30 days, and we actually hit 40. But again, it was shifting not just how recruiting was thinking about the candidate experience, but how the business was thinking about it. And the last one, you might recognize the President of the US, Barack Obama. He came to LinkedIn's offices and met with our CEO, Jeff Weiner. This is about 1.5 years ago to talk about putting Americans back to work. But because our members come first and our employees are members, we put a lottery in place that employees could apply to go. I thought being an American abroad, I would have a shoe-in. Turns out I didn't. But 5 of our employees from Europe were invited and flew in and got to attend the session with the President of the United States. This is about incorporating values with culture and reinforcing it at every opportunity as an HR community. The next one that I like to talk about is focusing on employee development. In Ireland, when I talk about this, people are a little shocked. They think, that's very provocative. What do you mean you don't talk about retention? And I say, no, we don't talk about retention. At LinkedIn, we assume eventually people will leave. They will leave the company. But our goal is that if they leave a better professional. And so we really focus on our employee development and the professional development and how our employees gain and leverage their professional acumen in their daily lives. We have a few unique programs. We're constantly trying out new ideas. Something that is very unique to LinkedIn is called In-Day. And it's 1 day a month that we take time out. We might take time out to get things done, or we might do something like Career In-Day, which was just this last week, which was headed up by the HR team. It was not my idea, but I'm so proud of the inspiration. And it's kind of like a university career fair, where employees can come and learn about all the different departments and what their jobs are and the skills it takes. Because we've had a number of people who have changed career paths. They've transformed their careers at LinkedIn in just the short time that they've been there. And this is a way to foster that inspiration. We've also tested out a program for more junior level staff called Rotate In, where we've identified people who have a very strong desire to learn new things. And they've rotated through 3 different departments: our sales operations department, our accounting department, as well as our customer services department. And even though those individuals, 2 of them have gone back to their original department, they now have a more well-rounded view on who we are as a business and what it means to be a customer and a member at LinkedIn. And the last one, which stays between the 4 walls because it's a program that I've just pitched and that we're going to pilot, called In Exchange. And In Exchange will be a platform for our employees to take up global as well as local opportunities, leveraging internal mobility to professionally develop their skills. So we have opportunity in Europe, and we have a number of former Europeans living and working in the US, for example. But I don't know them. So we will be using LinkedIn's platform to identify and let those employees know about these opportunities, because we find that those employees who already have the LinkedIn experience ramp more quickly. They come up to success in their new job faster than perhaps an external candidate. But we must be thoughtful about how we leverage that and how it affects our operations in the field. So it's piloted. Please don't quote me on that, but I'm really excited about it because, again, it's how we're thinking about our employees developing, but also how we can leverage our platform in order to do that. The last one might be a little bit more traditional. We've launched a learning portal called InLearn. InLearn. We kind of went between Learn In and InLearn. We're a little crazy about the in. But this is a portal for employees worldwide to access learning and development programs via technology. We still do in-house, on-the-job training, But this is also a way for people to better understand and leverage our technology in order to learn. But it goes beyond that. Something that you might not realize, or many of you may be part of, is our LinkedIn groups. And I'm part of a number of groups. In fact, I'm on a group with Mazars. Because I love the exchange of ideas, and from a professional standpoint in HR, I look at what is the competitive landscape, but I might not know HR professionals in Germany. I might not know that many HR professionals in France. But by leveraging these groups, I can post questions. I can have a dialogue with like-minded people who have similar questions or ideas, or who can help me do my job better. And in fact, that's how I met 3 HR directors in the UAE, where I went before we launched, so I could better understand the employment climate there. The other piece is that we leverage it internally. And again, you might think, how is this oriented to professional development? But it's a platform for employees to share and collaborate across different countries and different time zones. So those onboarding, the induction class that I was talking about, oftentimes we'll create a group on LinkedIn so that they can stay in touch. And it's a nice way for us to develop a community of our employees. So the last piece that I'm going to touch on, and again, I'm hoping to inspire. I think every company has to look at their own people strategy different. But I want to talk about managing your employer brand. Now at LinkedIn, because of our platform, our employer brand is wholly linked to who we are. But I'm going to actually use Mazars as an example. But before I talk about that, I want to inspire you. I want to talk about why it matters. 63% of users of social media expect companies to have a presence online, not just a website. They expect a presence on social media. They expect a presence on Facebook. They expect a presence on LinkedIn. So it's important that your brand is extended beyond traditional print and beyond traditional websites. We talked a little bit about the followers, but we find that 70% of LinkedIn members are following or will follow companies that they're interested in. Whether they're interested in jobs or not, they're following the company to look for news updates. I follow a number of companies that I might not want to work for, but I know people who do. And that's important, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Followers of companies are 8 times more active on social media. And when we think about the generational difference, you know, we're coming into an era where we'll have 4 generations in the workforce, from an internship to somebody who's near retirement. We haven't seen that since the turn of the century, and typically that was in the working class. We're now seeing it in the professional class. So when you think of that, all the new people that are coming into the workforce, they're 8 times more active on social media. I bet it's actually going to increase, because they will have grown up using social media as part of their professional development. But they're also 8 times more likely to share your employer brand story. And I'm going to show you an example that I took last night, a screenshot of that. So I'll come back to that in a moment. So a strong employer brand fundamentally does one other thing. It lowers your cost of hire to 50%. And we see this because we track costs of hire for our clients as well as internally. Now internally it's a little bit skewed because we only use LinkedIn, so it's not really a fair example. But we do find that has an immediate impact. You might not recognize this. This is Mazars' career page. The career page they have on LinkedIn. And what I love about this is when I met with the HR team at Mazars a couple of months ago, we talked about how they could improve their career page, how to extend their employer brand onto LinkedIn. And I was so proud because they did. And when you go to the LinkedIn, or pardon me, to the Mazars webpage, you see the same branding, you see the same imagery, and you see some of the same language describing what it means to be an employee. But let's take a look. You can see, it's hard to see, but up here it shows who I'm connected to at Mazars. So I'm not a Mazars employee, I'm just a follower. But these are the people I'm connected to. Well, if I click on Chris Roberts, which I did last night, and I did tell him that I was using his example, I clicked on Chris Roberts. And what you might see over here is that because I've clicked on an employee of Mazars, on the right-hand, or your right-hand side, you can't see it, but it says, imagine working at Mazars. And it tells me a job that might suit my profile. And in fact, when I looked at what Chris was posting, I was pretty interested. he had some great stuff on there. And so in fact, I liked one of his posts, and I actually forwarded another post that he sent about Mazars and about the event today. So not only has Mazars just extended their employer brand using career pages, they've extended it using their own employees' profiles and social media. That's powerful. That's something that we need to be thinking about, both internally for our internal employees and also for people that might be followers or interested in working for our company. The whole point about sharing Chris's profile, which is a very good one to share, is that fostering your brand ambassadors in an era where social media is prevalent will have an impact for you as an employer. So sorry, I guess I did zoom in a little so you could see some of the great unique aspects of the jobs, working at Mazars, having the video channel, which is really important, especially when you're targeting millennials. You might have a shorter attention span. You need to say more with less. And here's a more detailed example of Chris and some of the updates. He's also leveraging the Influencer, which is a new program LinkedIn just launched, where you can follow people in the industry that you want, who happen to be an influencer, might be affecting your view on the world. And here's an example of how I forwarded what Chris said about today's event. So not only did it reach Chris's network, but it also reached 1,800 people in my network. So my whole point is to be inspired. And I did have to throw the in there. Thank you. Do we have any questions? I think that's an excellent question. I think that one of the unique things I found coming to LinkedIn is that we assume that there are competitors everywhere. So Facebook as a competitor is nothing new. They've been toying with this for some time. Our platform is about the professional network. It's not about combining your personal and professional. And so we feel, and I feel, that fundamentally that separation of your personal life from your professional life is still salient and relevant to many of our members today and many of our future members. On a personal experience, my sister posts on Facebook some very embarrassing photos. And she finds it hilarious. But that's not who, when I was 17 and I had terrible hair and wore clothes that I'm not proud of, that's not who I am 20 years later. I'm a different professional. And so while I think that Facebook is launching some interesting products, there's a number of other companies who are also launching interesting products. And we assume that competitors are out there. But we also assume that our members value their professional life and the fact that they are separating their personal and professional. And they'll find that very relevant. I must say we are a publicly traded company in the United States. I am in HR. I am not in product. So while there's many wonderful things, I don't feel that I'm necessarily qualified to comment on them. I think that we've launched new products for sales professionals, which is very compelling because we've looked at what our members are doing. And that's how the recruiting piece came about, was that we found that recruiters were leveraging LinkedIn. We're now seeing and have seen that sales professionals leverage LinkedIn heavily. And so creating tools for shortcuts for them is really impactful, and that's something that we've launched recently. There's a number of new things that we've launched. The influencers I find really compelling. I'm following a number of people that I might not normally connect to because they don't know me, but it gives me access to their thoughts and ideas and things that they find interesting that's relevant to my job and profession. So there's a number of things. As far as what's in the, what's cooking in the kitchen, I'm not allowed to say, but I think some of our recent launches are very interesting. Well, personally, I think Kodak invented many wonderful digital products. I think there's a number of things that happen evolving over time. And so looking at the competitive landscape and staying ahead of trends, and I think that's what I found so interesting about your commentary, Laurent, was looking at mega trends and where those trends are going are an important aspect to any platform in social media or any product strategy, is staying ahead of what's happening in the marketplace. And I love the Kodak example because for many of us, we've used Kodak's products through our lives, and there's a bit of nostalgia for it. But companies that stay relevant, that are staying ahead of that curve, are looking at the mega trends. They're predicting where things are going. And hopefully Kodak will find a new life and a new way. But if not, we'll always remember those Kodak moments.